We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
Just looking at a demo recently, and the integrator looks at me and says, "We control lights," and I was like, "Okay." And then he changed lighting scenes, and the shades closed, and I went, "Oh," and he said, "We control all of the light."
That reminds me of a Spira statement when Lutron got into shading, that they can't say they control lighting if they don't control the largest luminary known to man.
You ever noticed that before? What is that? Weird.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk HTSA energy, virtual lighting, JASCO in development, and CDS certifications. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 426, Virtual Lighting. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Taft Stricklin. He's the dude over at Just Add Power. How you doing, Taft?
I'm good. I'm very good.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. Then we have Mr. Bob Archer. He's the senior editor over at CE Pro. How you doing, Bob?
Awesome. And you, Matt?
I am doing fantastic. It's almost summer here, it seems now. All right, gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. HTSA's 2024 Spring Conference provides a shot in the arm for its members. The slogan of the show was Energize, and there's a bunch of really good information in that article. Go read through it. One of the things that was very interesting is they started talking about energy, hence the name of the show, specifically the energy deficit that seems to be fairly prevalent throughout the industry right now, talking about how not only is everyone who's working in the industry seemingly a little worn out, but how important it is for leaders to energize their people as much as possible. Taft, let me start with you on this. Do you think that there is a major energy deficit right now leading to burnout? Is it just kind of everyone's talking about it, so it must be there, or are you dealing with it yourself?
Well, I think, hopefully I don't use any stupid, key phrases that people are tired of hearing, but I think burnout's a real thing. And top to bottom, I've seen it. I've seen it with my kids. I've seen it with employees. I've seen it with, integrators that are customers and friends. And I've seen it through basically every vertical. My wife's in a completely different industry, and I've seen it there. And I think part of it is things have changed so much, and for a while everybody kind of had to pivot. And so it's like, let's take everything you were doing before, let's throw it up in the air, let's jumble it, let's change how it's done, let's make it more complicated, and let's continue to do it. And I kind of feel like people are adjusting back to the world as we knew it. And that's taken a little bit of adjustment. And I think during the last, COVID started, 13 years ago? Is that how long it's been?
I think so.
I'm just
18,
kidding.
I believe.
But just the last 4 years, we've seen employees and friends and integrators have their own personal challenges. And I think it's just really kind of piled onto people. I think when you worry about work and then you worry about your kids' well-being, and you just kind of put it all on your back. And I think that's really where it comes from. What I've seen is, I think it's less now than it was a year and a half, 2-3 years ago. I think it's gotten a bit easier. I think people are a little more charged and recharged. And I think especially right now, as we come out of a time where people are a little more charged, and then for those of us that live in places where, the sun doesn't shine and things like that, as we roll into spring and summer, I feel really optimistic about people being recharged, reinvigorated, excited about business, excited about what they're doing, and so on and so forth. So, but I definitely think the burnout thing is real. Luckily, none of us, worked in any sort of first responder or worked at a grocery store or anything like that. I'm like, I couldn't imagine doing one of those jobs and coming out the other side the same. So, while I might complain about it, I feel like it's a bit of a first world problem for me. But I do think it's real, and I do think it's become less and less. So,
yeah, that's a great point. Bob, one of the other aspects of the show was highlighting education, obviously, and their push to stay green, which is kind of coupled a little bit with their Lightapalooza aspect of things. One thing that that Tom mentioned that I found interesting was they're talking about, again, the lighting vertical for our channel. And he said, and I quote, "The thing that one of the integrators we've been working with has observed is that our channel is best positioned to do this." He's talking about lighting here. "Architects don't know it, builders don't know it, and electricians don't know it." I have heard that sentiment quite a lot, that we as an industry are the best positioned for the whole, smart lighting movement, but we're the only ones who are aware that we are the best suited for it. Is that a true statement? And is it a true statement in the sense that if we're the only ones who know we're good at it, does it even matter?
Matt, I think this is a problem that our industry has had going back even before lighting became the new trendy technology that guys were offering. But that's been the story of CEDIA and this whole industry going back into the 90s. We offer this plethora of great services, and we seem to be the only ones that know about it. Over the past several years, more have learned about it as some of these technologies and solutions have become more mainstream. But he is right. It's an ongoing problem, and over 25, 30 years, nobody's really seemed to come up with any sort of answer to be able to bring what we do as an industry to the masses on a level that people can completely understand simply. And I think that's the case with lighting. I do agree with it, but to distill that down to some homeowner, it's going to take a lot of work, and we have to be aware that it's going to take work. We can't expect quick results.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from Residential Systems, The Power of VR and Human-Centric Lighting, by Dave Chance, the president of Cogent 360, how immersive virtual environments can illuminate the case for human-centric lighting. Go read through the story. It's a really good, thought-provoking article on the concept of using a virtual showroom to display and demonstrate, more importantly, how human-centric lighting works and the effects of it in your home. Bob, let me come back to you and start with you on this one. Is the virtual aspect of this, right, creating, whether it's a 3D render or an actual walkable, viewable 3D space, is that really, honestly, probably the best opportunity to demonstrate how lighting can affect a room if you don't have a fully built lighting showroom?
It probably is, but that's a caveat that ideally dealers ought to have showrooms where they can demonstrate whatever chosen product line or technology they want to demonstrate. And right now, lighting is driving the bus here in the market. So dealers probably ought to have a lighting system set up so they can demonstrate circadian lighting and all of the other elements that proper lighting can bring to a homeowner's daily lives.
Yeah, that's a great point. Taft, we go back and forth kind of on this show as long as I've been doing it, over whether you need to have a showroom, whether you don't need a showroom, whether showrooms are in vogue, whether they're out of vogue, whether you should put it on a trailer, put it in a bus, all of these ridiculous, kind of flip-flops on the showroom aspect. Should we as an industry be investing heavily on the virtual side because it kind of ticks all the boxes?
Well, I think it's not a bad way to go. I think experiencing something virtual is something more and more people are accepting of. But at the same time, being able to walk in and experience something in real life, it could not be a full showroom. It could simply be a room. And, on the note of lighting, just, looking at a demo recently, and the integrator looks at me and says, "We control lights." And I was like, okay. And then he changed lighting scenes, and the shades closed. And I went, oh, and he said, "We control all of the light." He's like, "You either control all the light or some of the light." And it was so powerful, and it was in their office. It was one room that just basically showed several different pieces of lighting, several different experiences, and then, window control. And I walked in, it was maybe a 10 by 12 room, and went, oh, this looks neato. There's some light fixtures, there's some can lights, there's a window. And then, a minute and a half later, I was like, wow, I want to hang out in here, because it was truly magical. And I feel like doing something virtual, great idea, but, doing one window and a handful of lights and doing the live demo is really something, something above and beyond. And reminding people, when you control light, you need to control all of it. And that was a really, really, really cool demo.
That reminds me of a Spira statement when Lutron got into shading, that they can't say they control lighting if they don't control the largest luminary known to man.
Yeah, and that's actually what was in the guy's showroom. Yeah. So I think he's partnered heavily with them, and it was a really impressive demo. And it takes a lot to knock my socks off, especially with dimming light and closing shades. Yeah, and I feel like virtual is fantastic. People are busy. You can email a link. You can text a link. People can look at it, check it out. They could do a VR headset, but nothing really replaces, the real thing live, and in person. So
yeah, that's a great point. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our next.
Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's A State of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control programming and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out A State of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.
Next story, this comes to us from Residential Tech Today. Jasco is set to provide circadian lighting as a standard in a Texas community. This is happening in the new development of Jubilee by Johnson Development Corp. out near Houston. They're going ahead with the Jasco Pro series of lighting solutions to, again, provide an entire circadian lighting solution throughout that subdivision or that development. Taft, I want to come back and start with you on this. Is it, I don't want to say it's interesting, but is it interesting, because I can't think of a better word, that this development went with the Jasco series of lighting opposed to maybe something that might be considered a little bit more a pro or integrator friendly, considering they're going after the health and wellness aspect of circadian?
Yeah, I was surprised. Not to paint somebody into a box, but when I think of them, I think of, inexpensive, Z-Wave switches and inexpensive, light bulbs. I am not familiar with their Pro Series. I don't know if it integrates seamlessly with, all the control systems, if it's just app-based. If it's something it lives in its own planet and you've got to enter that planet to control it, or what it does automatically. But I was a little surprised to see that. I did see that it has some sort of emergency flash, which I thought was interesting. Not a lot of people bring things up like that can be built around a control system and done with a whole lot of things, but I thought that was interesting. So
That's a great point. Bob, when you see this, I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I wonder why builders in some of these kind of flagship developments continually go with the, kind of DIY-ish realm, right? It'll have, and again, I don't mean any shade by that. There just is a difference there, right? They'll go with Ring doorbells and alarm.com stuff and a basic Wi-Fi package and, all of the stereotypical DIY solutions. And then at the same time, it brings to mind a training I was on with one of the major lighting manufacturers. And I was the only integrator in the training with a bunch of other high-level interior designers. And I asked the question of, how does this integrate? How does your solution integrate with everything that we play with on a daily basis? And they said, oh, yeah, it does. But we've created our own app because customers just like it and it just works. And they don't want to connect everything else. Is that the driver behind why developers kind of don't typically look in our direction? They look more mainstream?
Well, to be honest, and I'll put a disclaimer on this. This is my opinion, not your opinion, not ResiWeek week or anyone else's. But it comes down to money. They want to market this as this high end smart home amenity, but they want to put the fewest amount of investment dollars into it. And we know the track record of the building industry. If you look back to the late 2000s and what the building industry did to the economy. And I give them credit for at least starting to look at smart home solutions, whether it be lighting or even something basic as pulling wire within a wall or something like that. But they want to put it out there that they're investing into the smart home and smart lighting, but they're not coming to Lutron or Crestron or any type of A-list company like that. They simply want to market it and do it so they can maximize their profit on it. I think it's pretty simple. Until they fully commit to it, it's nothing but lip service.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty accurate point. All right, let's hit our last story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Why are you CDS certified? Go read through the article. There's a handful of people from the community talking about why they've gone and got CDS certified and what it means to both themselves personally, but also to their companies. Bob, let me start with you on this one as we kind of wrap up. I am 100% in favor of people getting certified in whatever field they're working in, right? Education is highly important and continued education is even more important. But I always kind of come back to the question of what is the public acceptance of that certification? i.e., over the years, I've held a litany of networking certifications from manufacturers. I've never once had a client ask me if we were certified to operate whatever it was that we were, selling or working on, because they just assume you knew. What is the value of certification when there may or may not be public acceptance? Does that matter?
It does matter, but it's an intangible. All it means is that for your company, you're looking to bring the highest level of service and customer satisfaction to your clientele. That if you're able to maximize whatever products and systems that you're installing and bring them to their full working potential, then your customers will get the best value out of it. But in terms of end users, they could care less. It may look good at the end of an email with your name and fancy title and all those little logos at the bottom of the email, but realistically, homeowners could care less.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Taft, wrap this up for me. I am continually at a kind of a crossroads because, as per my previous statement, I fully endorse and support people going and getting certified. I think it's good and it's important. And we've all worked on projects where somebody before us didn't really know what they were doing, which certification may or may not help that. But I contrast the push for certification in, honestly, the AV space in general, whether it's commercial or residential, with the fact that the majority of Fortune 500 companies are removing requirements for bachelor's degrees or really any formal education. They just want you to show up and do the job, whether you've got that piece of paper that says you are good at passing a test somewhere. What's the balance between this?
Oh, the balance between it. So what popped in my head is the end of last year, I had an installer reach out to me who I know fairly well. And he said, I know you deal with people all over the country. And he's like, over the last year or so, I've been working on getting CEDIA certified, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay. And he said, yeah, because I'm planning to move across the country and it's going to help my resume. And I was like, you know what, that's a good point. And he said, I'm either a, potential trunk slammer with a cordless drill and a level, and can pass a background check, from the Midwest moving to the coast, or I'm that guy who also did some CEDIA certification. And for him, it was marketing himself,
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like, I did the work, right? And I can definitely see value in that for him. I need to catch up with him because I know that he's moved jobs, and I'm curious how that all is going. But I think there is a happy medium in there. Part of it is people expect that you're some part of an organization, like the National Realtors Association, the monopoly. But this is a little bit different. It's really about education. But I don't know that it's going to really resonate with consumers. Maybe 1% or something. But I don't really see it resonating. But as far as education purposes, growing your company, growing yourself, your own personal brand, I see value in it.
That's a great point. I want to just share a funny anecdote that I've kind of been collecting the last 6 months from some of my clientele. I've been asking them what their impression of people or our company would be if, again, at the end of every email, if we had all these certifications, and if every time we tried to close a deal, we talked about the certifications that we hold and all these accolades and all this other stuff. Mainly because I'm always curious with this stuff. And I'll preface that the majority of these people that I was talking to and have been talking to, they're all professionals. They all have degrees, and they went to med school, or they went and got their legal degree or something like that, right? They're not the entrepreneurs who came from nothing and never went to school. The feedback I got from them was that if I were to do that every time we're pitching them, and they didn't have any previous experience with us, that either we must be brand new because we're pitching all this stuff, or we must not really know what we're doing, which is why we're pitching all this stuff, which I just found very interesting to see that was the takeaway. And it got me thinking of, I've never asked to see my doctor's diploma, or, a surgeon's diploma, or the dentist diploma, or my lawyer's diploma, even though they all have them up on the wall. They don't really, unless you get the one doctor who's like, no, you got to call me doctor. They don't push it either. I just found it very interesting. Maybe that's just me, But all right, let's leave it there. Thank you both for joining us. Bob, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro, where can they do that?
They can go to cepro.com.
Excellent. Thank you, my friend. Taft, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Just Add Power, where can they do that?
JustAddPower.com, and then Just Add Power's on all the social media outlets as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you both again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter or X at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we support or that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.